November the 5th, 2018. Bro, you know how fast this year has really went by. It's crazy. Welcome to the Third Down Show, guys. I'm your host, T-Wayne the Good Don. It's good to be back. What a heck of a weekend we had this past weekend. I could tell you one thing. I thought after how it started between two other teams, I know the Pelicans really didn't matter this weekend to a certain extent, but I will say this, I thought it was going to end on a bad note, but on the end, it did end with a good note with the Saints on yesterday. That's something that we want to cover in a little bit. But we will talk about the fall of this past weekend on Saturday with LSU losing to the Alabama Crimson Tide. I will discuss a little bit about that. I got my studs and duds from the NFL this past weekend, and we will talk about the Saints. So let's start with the irrelevancy of this past weekend, but something that I want to touch on right quick will be the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans have lost 5 straight, dating back since their last win was against the Brooklyn Nets. They almost lost that game as well. The Brooklyn Nets went stupid. The Pelicans now find themselves at 4-5, looking at the bottom of looking up from people like San Antonio and Houston, who's now starting to get it together. Now, here's my thing, guys, and this is what I want to make it short and sweet because I really don't want to talk on this too long. But Anthony Davis did come out the other day and say that he feels he has to be almost perfect to win basketball games and to give his team the winning chance every night in and night out. Now, that's not something that you want to hear from your star player. Now, let's talk about the city of New Orleans. When you think about who really runs the city, there's two guys. You think about Drew Brees and you think about Anthony Davis. Now, especially with how things are going right now, you start to see younger talent start to make big faces in the NFL. So, I know this really don't have nothing to do with nothing, but you think about Michael Thomas, you think about Alvin Kamara, and guys of that nature balling out the way they balling out. I mean, they starting to become just as big or part of the future of the city of New Orleans as well. Now, Anthony Davis, who feels he's the best basketball player in the league, and which, in my eyesight, I don't see why he cannot argue that point. He don't have all the hardware yet, but this young man is really one of the best in the game. He's a defensive player. He's an all-defensive player. He was an all-NBA last year. He's an all-star game MVP. Sooner or later, he will be league MVP one day. And even if he leaves New Orleans one day, that number 23 jersey will be retired in New Orleans. I definitely believe that with all of my heart. My problem with that is here's the thing I think we got to understand is that Anthony Davis don't have the help of other teams, other players. And it just hurt that DeMarcus left to go to a bigger market and kind of left New Orleans in a shock. This team don't have the talent that they had last year. There was a time last year where Anthony Davis got hurt, and I think they went on the road. They played Denver one night. They lost badly. I think AD got hurt, I believe, and then the following night they had to go to Sacramento and play the Sacramento Kings. DeMarcus Cousins carried that team when AD was out, and that's the problem. I don't think they truly have another A-plus guy on the team, especially while Jrue Holiday is starting to struggle a little bit. He's not coming off the gate as strong as he was how he finished the season. As he's struggling a little bit, they don't have an A-plus guy to really keep them afloat in ball games right now when he's not on the floor. And this is all starting to show up now. My problem with this is I think that now you got to look at Dale Demps have to do something quick before he continue to start talking and talking. You know, you already got some of the fans of the bigger markets like the Boston Celtics and the LA Lakers already trying to make assumptions on how and where and how can they get Anthony Davis to LA or how can they get him to Boston. Which is cool, I understand. I mean, I still think the place that will probably give New Orleans the best back, besides Boston, probably with the draft picks, but if you want players now, probably would be to be Chicago, which you would get out of Chicago and everything like that. If you ask me, I think Chicago probably would be the best place for him. I think they probably could potentially build around in Chicago and bring Chicago back relevant in the Eastern Conference. But we're a long way from that right now. But I don't want to see him. I hate to see him leave, but it's almost like how people are saying to a degree just something I just heard on ESPN. It really makes sense on how the Green Bay Packers are wasting Aaron Rodgers' talents. And when you think about it, to a degree, how it like everybody else is on another level, and but they're not trying to get to the level where Aaron Rodgers is at. I mean, and that's the whole freaking team, you know. I mean, when Aaron Rodgers goes out, they don't have another answer. And even when the last couple of weeks, the rest of the team's been letting Aaron Rodgers down. You know, I don't think the Packers going to be able to find. I mean, right now we're in the middle of the football season. The Packers got to find themselves back in the mix to get back in the mix for the playoff hunt in their division. You remember they got that one tie with the Minnesota Vikings. But to a degree, you feel that Green Bay is wasting his talents by not putting the right personnel around him. And that's come with bad general management. I mean, some people started to blame Mike McCartney and everything like that. So, I mean, then what you do, you want to keep this guy. You got to make moves. I think New Orleans might have to look at the same way. I like what they did with the Nikolai Mirotic trades. I also like, they did get Drew Holiday a few years back. With the Nerlens Noel trade for the 76ers. I mean, those are good trades, but tell me something else that's good that's really been coming out. Solomon Hill, I think he's overpaid. I think also when you look at the bench production right now that they lack of don't have. Because remember, Solomon Hill, he's not helping you no bunch. Your starting five really have to really put up a good percentage to get you to win a game every game. Ian Clark haven't really showed up too much for you this year. Darius Miller haven't really gave you a game yet this year. Nikolai Mirotic has been forced in the starting lineup. I mean, to me, you want him to come off the bench to give you more of a spark, but you really don't have a choice right now. Frank Jackson's still a raw project, still working talent. And then you don't have Wesley Johnson. You traded him for Alexia Jinka, who Alexia Jinka haven't really been relevant since the Monte Williams era, but it's to me is right now you're in a bad spot to really try to make moves to get somebody else to come to New Orleans. And I think what's going to happen with the Pelicans, all in all, what's going to happen if they continue to fall. Like I said, they're on a 5-game. They play Oklahoma City tonight. To me, this is a must-win just to stay relevant in the Western Conference. Because remember, the West is real hard this year, and I like how some games they have competed and they have stayed in ball games. But the problem with that is I think that New Orleans just don't have enough talent to compete with the Golden State Warriors, with the Portland Trail Blazers, with some of these teams, even though a lot of the teams that they had from Portland last year in the playoffs, they have retained. But I just don't think they have enough to stay with these teams anymore because they just don't have. Last year, I think they was right off a lot of momentum. Like it's us against the world. It's still us against the world. But remember, I mean, look at the Denver Nuggets. They 7. I think they 7, 8, 9-1, something like that at this moment in time. So I mean, some of these teams that was at the bottom where you was at last year started to make moves. This is not where you want to go right now. I figured when they sat him down against Utah, I didn't feel too good about that. But I understand he was injured. They had no answers for Utah. They had no answers for Denver. They have no answers for They didn't have no answers for Denver. They didn't have no answers for a lot of these other teams. It's not in a good spot right now. It's not. So we just going to continue to hope that things get better for the Pelicans before it's too late and he's gone. And probably the best player in franchise history. That's over Chris Paul. That's even over going all the way back to even the great Pistol Pete. The best player in franchise history. You don't want him to leave out on your city and dip out like that. We gotta wait and see what's going to happen with that one. So on that note, let's move on. I mean, I can only express and talk about that for so long before I really get upset. Because if we lose Anthony Davis, that's going to be a wrap. I think so. You might well start trading the whole team away, because just to start building for the future, if that's going to happen. LSU. They don't deserve to get no music played today. LSU falls last Saturday, 29-0 to Alabama. Biggest concept I took from this game, they had 25 attempts for 12 rushing yards in the ball game. They went 5 for 16 on third down. Time of possession, Alabama had 35 minutes and 18 seconds, and LSU had 24 minutes and 42 seconds. Those was, to me, the key parts of the game that really hurt LSU the most. Time of possession, because Alabama was on the field for about 35 minutes. LSU was on pretty close to almost about 10 minutes less. And Third down efficiency, they went 5 for 16. Only had five third down completions in the game out of 16 tries. That's less than half, and 25 rushes for 12 yards. That's not LSU like at all. So what do I have to say about that one is pretty much the problem with this game is that LSU just don't match up well offensively. And really, it's no shocker to all the fans. Everybody who are a fan of this football team probably was the biggest concern knowing that LSU's offense haven't been up to par all season. Because if you look back where they've been, they have hit these cold spells in the second quarter. My concern in this game was LSU cannot hit cold to start the game. They have to come out and hit. Even if they get down the field, but they don't convert in the red zone. The special teams games was in their favor, but this Cole boy, he missed the field a easy one. They at least put 3 points on the board. That's the type of night it was for LSU this past weekend. I will say this though, I still felt like if they could get down the field and the special team games was in their favor, they had a shot. I would put play calling. I would also say not only play calling, but I would say, just I think they didn't overhype this. I felt good about this game because they have for years they overhyped this game, but I felt like guys up front, especially on the offensive end, they wasn't ready for this game. I think even when they had a little hype video, you saw some of the guys' faces like, man, they not ready for this. They really not ready for this. They scared. I think Joe Burrow wasn't prepared for this because all year long, this is something that I wanted to see LSU do. Let Joe Burrow let the ball rip. And he was asked to let it rip more than what he was accustomed to. And this is not an area that he's asked to do too much for this team. So then you take away about 75% of your offense when you limit them to just 12 yards in the game out of 25 attempts. So now you're giving the ball and the guy to say, well, here, you got to win this game. This is something that he's not accustomed to doing because you never asked him to do this for you all season long. So that's to me, and then the biggest call when it was down there on about the 5 and they did the play action. Look, the run game haven't worked all game so far going into halftime. At least if you can get out of there, you can be 9-0 with the football back again. Try to use your special teams. Because listen, your defense did more than enough. Because this is a team that's been scoring 50, 60 points on people. Your defense did more than enough to slow these bad boys down. It was up to the offense and special teams game to put the LSU to give them a chance. This game could have easily been 16. I honestly say it could have been 16-6, and I would have took there a 10-point loss to Alabama, 16-6. I think they probably would have scored another touchdown. I think LSU either came out better with a better game plan for sure. Got down the field 9-3, and then maybe Alabama, it might get them get another stop on defense because now you got momentum. You're down by 6 points. You stop them again. Here you go. It's now 9-6 going into the fourth quarter. Now you feel real good. You're 3 points down from Alabama, and maybe somehow, some way, I just think just because how offensive talented that they are on that side of the ball, they get a score. 16-6 was the final score. People will respect that a lot more than 29-0. To me, that was all on poor game management on the coaching staff, and it was also on poor play calling on the coaching staff. And I just think they didn't use to me, they didn't have the best of game plans. Looked like I saw about 5 or 6, 7 plays they ran all night long, same time on the offensive side of the ball. They ran slants, they tried to run a screen, they tried to run the football, they tried to push it a little bit downfield, and that's all I really saw out of them. They did not make it hard for Alabama to really defend them at all. And that's been the problem for years. I think not football has really passed LSU by on the offensive side. So when will it stop? Because you see how talented this team really is. You see it, especially defensively. You see how talented this team is. This team has so much talent that I think because when you evaluate the season when it does end, LSU went out. They probably for sure going to the Sugar Bowl, 10-2. I think they should definitely be Arkansas. They should be Rice, and they should be A&M. But when you evaluate the season, when the season is over, what would you say that was good about this season? We 75% of the hardest games that we had coming back from last year, from last football season, guys that was in the top five or contention for college football playoffs, we defeated